Another occurrence of those early days is rather more to my credit. Long after my own sons had grown to manhood, I recalled to my father's recollection an experience of which until then he had never had an explanation. My brother, as a child, suffered from weak ankles, and, in consequence, frequently fell down, and so got into trouble at home. At last, hoping to cure him of what father thought was only carelessness, he was threatened that he should be whipped every time he came back showing any signs of having fallen down. When I reminded my father of this regulation, he said quite triumphantly, yes, it was so, and he was completely cured from that time. Ah, I answered, so you thought yet it was not so? For he had many a tumble afterwards, but I always managed to wash his knees and to brush his clothes, so as to remove all traces of his falls. Illustrations from childhood days. I recollect when a child, seeing on the mantelpiece a stone apple, wonderfully like an apple too, and very well coloured. I saw that apple year after year, but it was no riper. It had been in favourable circumstances for softening and sweetening, if it ever would have become mellow. But I do not think if the sun of the equator had shone on it, or if the dews of Hermon had fallen on it, it would ever have been fit to be brought to the table. Its hard marble substance would have broken a giant's teeth. It was a hypocritical professor, a hard-hearted mocker of little children, a mere mimic of God's fruits. There are church members who used to be unkind, covetous, censorious, bad-tempered, egotistical, everything that was hard and stony. Are they so now? Have they not mellowed with a lapse of years? No, they are worse, if anything. Very dogs in the house for snapping and snarling, rending and devouring. Great men at hewing down the carved work of the sanctuary with their axes, or at filling up wells and marring good pieces of land with stones. When the devil wants a stone to fling at a minister, he is sure to use one of them. When we were small children, we had a little plot of garden ground, and we put our seeds into it. I well recollect now, the day after I had put in my seed, I went and scraped the soil away to see if it was not growing, as I expected it would have been, after a day or so at the very longest. And I thought the time amazingly long before the seed would be able to make its appearance above the ground. That was childish, you say? I know it was. But I wish you were as childish with your regard to your prayers, that you would, when you have put them in the ground, go and see if they have sprung up, and if not at once, be not childish in refusing to wait till the appointed time comes. Always go back and see if they have begun to sprout. If you believe in prayer at all, expect God to hear you. If you do not expect, you will not have. God will not hear you unless you believe he will hear you. But if you believe he will be as good as your faith. He will never allow you to think better of him than he is. He will come up to the mark of your thoughts, and according to your faith, so shall it be done unto you. When we used to go to school, we would draw houses and horses and trees on our slates. And I remember how we used to write house under the house and horse under the horse. For some persons might have thought the horse was a house. So there are some people who need to wear a label round their necks to show that they are Christians at all, or else we might mistake them for sinners. Their actions are so like those of the ungodly. I remember once, when a lad, having a dog which I very much prized, and some man in the street asked me to give him the dog. I thought it was pretty impudent, and I said as much. A gentleman, however, to whom I told it, said, "Now, suppose the Duke of so-and-so, who was a great man in the neighborhood, asked you for the dog. Would you give it to him?" I answered, "I think I would." So the gentleman said, "Then you are just like all the world. You would give to those who do not need." I have seen, when I was a boy, a juggler in the street throw up half a dozen balls or knives and plates, and continue throwing and catching them, and to me it seemed marvelous. But the religious juggler beats all others hollow. He has to keep up Christianity and worldliness at the same time, and to catch two sets of balls at once. To be a free man of Christ and a slave to the world at the same time must need fine acting. One of these days you, Sir Juggler, will make a slip with one of your balls, and your game will be over. A man cannot always keep it up and play so cleverly at all hours. Sooner or later he fails, and then he is made a hissing and a byword, and becomes ashamed, if any shame be left in him. I can never forget the rushlight which dimly illuminated the sitting room of the old house, nor the dips, which were pretty fair, when there were not too many of them, to the pound, nor the mould candles, which came out only when there was a party, or some special personage was expected. Short sixes were very respectable specimens of household lights. Composites have never seemed to me to be so good as the old sort, made of pure tallow. But I dare say I may be wrong. Nevertheless, I have no liking for composites in theology, but prefer the genuine article without compromise. A nightlight is a delightful invention for the sick. It has supplanted the rushlight, which would frequently be set in a huge sort of tower, which to me, as a sick child at night, used to suggest dreadful things. With its lights shining through the round holes at the side, like so many ghostly eyes, it looked at me staringly, and with its round ring on the ceiling, it made me think of Nebuchadnezzar's burning fiery furnace.